2 years ago, Congressman John Hall ran against and defeated longtime Congresswoman Sue Kelly on a campaign of change and reform. This year, Mr. Hall's opponent, Iraqi veteran Kieran Michael Lalor, says Mr. Hall's not reformed but joined Washington with business as usual. For the next half hour, we'll hear from both men as they stake out their positions on a host of issues important to the voters of the 19th Congressional District. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
So what's the issue? You said that he's been in 2 years. You don't feel that he's really done in Washington what he said he was going to do. What specifically?
I'll tell you what, 2006, the Democrats ran against a culture of corruption. It still exists. In some cases, it might be worse. We have the top tax writer in this country, the head of the Appropriations Committee in the House, Charlie Rangel, who doesn't pay his own taxes. He's got 4 rent-controlled apartments. He's given, I think, $14,000 directly to Congressman Hall's campaign. The New York Times called for Charlie Rangel to be removed from his committee leadership. A number of Democrats have given back Rangel's dirty money, but my opponent has refused to.
Okay, so the issue, though, is you're saying that he went in and he hasn't done anything corrupt. He just hasn't given them the money back that Rangel...
I mean, if you're running commercials and funding your campaign with dirty money, voters can draw their own conclusion as to that.
Well, there's been no investigation, although Congressman Rangel did ask for, the first time that I recall anybody asking for an ethics committee investigation of their own. I appreciate not being interrupted if that's possible, but he also has paid his back taxes and fines, and there's been no indictment or even charges that would lead me to return that money. But what I would say,
but just in terms of how it might look, I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi sort of got a hold of this and sort of pushed him into it. But even if there was nothing wrong, and you made your case here, just perception.
Change?
Perception.
Well, in terms of change. We've changed things in the energy field by for the first time.
Perception in terms of returning money, even though there's nothing been wrong. Do you think it's just a perception?
I think he should have due process, and there hasn't been even a committee finding, let alone any legal charges. Meanwhile, Senator Stevens on the Republican side is still in office while he's indicted and under trial. I just don't see any comparison.
No, he hasn't contributed to my campaign, and if he had, I would have given it back.
Okay.
The defense of Congressman Rangel is the exact same defense Republican used to defend Tom DeLay and Congressman Foley and all the other culture of corruption types who were ousted 2 years ago.
So that's what you mean by he's joined in with just not reforming?
There's corruption and there's toleration of corruption. One's bad and one is worse, but they're
okay,
neither
so
of them are good for the relationship between the voters and our Congress.
Okay, but you can run on issues like that, and I think it has some merit. But specifically, there's big crises facing this country right now. So what specifically do you want to do if you get in there that you want to do to bring things to the 19th Congressional District to talk about? Let's talk about the financial crisis right off the bat.
I feel exploited by the financial crisis. I'm going to get back to that in a second. I want to talk about exploitation.
Little focus.
Sure, no problem. I want to talk about the exploitation of veterans by my opponent. My opponent won 2 years ago, surprised everybody. No one's really sure how it happened. He and Speaker Pelosi launched a plan how he could get reelected. They found out there were 77,000 of us veterans in this district. So they said, here's a man who's never concerned himself in his 60 years with veterans. We'll put him on the Veterans Committee because there's so many veterans in that district. We'll put him on a Veterans Subcommittee chairmanship. And the reason that was done was to exploit the massive veterans vote in this district. Why do I call it exploitation? I've heard Congressman Hall talk many times about a veteran from down in Westchester County who was so fragile after his experiences in World War II. He couldn't hold down a job. He couldn't talk about his experiences without crying. Congressman Hall did his job. His staff did his job, what he's paid for, and got him some money. The exploitation comes in when Congressman Hall delivers this man his well-earned money that he risked his life to get with a big, giant cartoon check as if he's Ed McMahon in Publishers Clearinghouse and sticks a camera in this guy's face. My curiosity is the camera and the media entourage for Congressman Hall's re-election or for this veteran?
I understand.
It's been all dollars so far.
But I will tell you, he's on the committee. He's on the committee. And he's also gotten a lot of veterans who have supported him, and he's done a lot of nice work. So let him just...
well, we've gotten over $600,000 in unjustly denied benefits for veterans in this district, ranging from World War II veterans all the way to OIF, OEF, Iraq, and Afghanistan veterans. Every vet who we did a public appearance with asked to do it and approved doing it. But more importantly, I was able to get a bill passed that I wrote to modernize the entire benefits process of the VA, which has been thoroughly overhauled in 50 years, including immediate payments to veterans who currently are waiting for 6 months or more for their disability benefits to be processed. And that went through the subcommittee. The committee was passed unanimously, 429 to nothing by the House, every Republican voting for it, as well as every Democrat voting for it. And then last Friday, after the Senate unanimously passed it, the President signed it into law. That's an accomplishment. And
Do you have the support of vets? Do you have the support of vets?
I believe I have the support of most veterans in this district.
And why do you think you don't have the support of a lot of veterans? Anything?
Well, the American Legion wrote a letter to us in support, as did the VFW, as did IAVA, which gave me an A+ rating for voting their perfect score on their scorecard. But American Legion said it was the first time they'd ever been asked up front what they wanted in a bill instead of being presented with a bill and asked for their support later.
There's one major veteran service organization in this country that endorses congressional candidates. That's the VFW, Political Action Committee. The VFW has endorsed me, and my opponent is on the Veterans Committee. There's 29 members of the Veterans Committee. There's only one member of that committee that the VFW is actively working to defeat, and that's my opponent. Well, you can quibble all you want about that, but the endorsement came down in the VFW magazine, which is delivered to 2.2 million members of the VFW. And let me talk about local veterans.
Hurry up, because I want to go into the finance. You have 20 seconds.
Okay, the local VFW recommended me to the state VFW, who recommended me to the national VFW, who recommended me to the VFW PAC. So
because
all
of your
levels
policies,
of the VFW.
because you're an Iraqi veteran?
No. They do not endorse challengers unless, in their own bylaws, the incumbent is unacceptable. So the VFW, in fact, found my opponent unacceptable.
But they strongly endorsed my legislation, however.
I want to go to the financial crisis, and I want to stay on it, so I'm not going to move off it if you try to get me to move off it. You voted for the $700 billion bailout bill. Tell me why you thought it was good. Obviously, they just threw an arbitrary number out there. It wasn't your fault. 700 was a big number. Why do you think it's good?
We had to do something. We were looking at a financial collapse, which we may see continue for some months, but we're trying to provide a bottom. We're trying to keep the recession from getting worse. And we didn't have multiple choice. We didn't have months or years to work this out. It was all of a sudden, yes or no. Are you going to take action or not?
Let me ask you, why did you not come out, though, as a reformer and say, Barney Frank, Chris Dodd, you're of my party, but you were really part of this thing, and you should take some responsibility for this. Also, Franklin Range, the head of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Why didn't you come out and say, I represent the 19th Congressional District before I represent anything else, and they were involved in it. I know President Bush was involved in it, too. He kept artificial interest rates low. It really hurt things. But don't you think that's your role?
My role was to fight to keep executive compensation low, to stop golden parachutes, to make sure that people were kept in their primary homes with foreclosure relief, to make sure there's a new IG, Inspector General, created. There are 2 oversight committees, that there's alternative minimum tax relief for the middle class, all included in this, that there's extensions of the renewable energy tax credit. There are a lot of good things that we got in this bill after the first 3-page version we were presented.
Do you ever think it's your role, though, to stand up against those you think were part of the cause?
Well, I don't think that they were part of the problem. I think the part of the problem was, the main problem was that the administration believes the market will fix everything, and they're against regulation. And after 8 years, we see where that led us.
So no responsibility for the Democrats.
There may be some, but I'm not aware of that. I'm not on that committee. I worked on the things I thought were important.
I think there's room for bipartisan criticism. The administration let us down. The Congress let us down. The leaders of those 2 banking committees certainly let us down.
It's always easier, though, when you're outside to criticize when you're not. Don't have a record.
Well, I don't know. If you follow this race closely, you'd know that everyone in the old Republican establishment, from Governor Pataki to Sue Kelly, came out against me. I had to defeat a former congressman to get the nomination and the top legislator in the Republican Party in Westchester County. So I'm not afraid to speak truth to power. Mm-hmm. I think it was interesting. Before we turned the cameras on, we flipped a coin to see how the order of operation would go here. A few days ago, my opponent referred to the bailout, $700 billion of your money and my money and good, solid, middle-class people's money, as a bet. He said, I admit it, it's a bet, it's on tape, you can see it on the Journal News' website. So we flipped the coin. I thought I was running against John Hall from New Orleans, not Kenny Rogers, the gambler. As this was reaching a crescendo in mid-September, the major credit problem, I said some kind of federal intervention was going to be a necessary evil, and I would have supported it if it got at the root causes and set something in place that would prevent it from happening again. What we got was a bill that looked out for the people at the top, it looked out for the people at the bottom, and 80 or 90% of us in the middle class were left out.
So you would have voted against it. What would you put in its place?
I would have put something that went after the people who have oversight over these regulations.
All right, so there would have been punitive for the people that have oversight, but what would have helped the middle class?
And the root causes. gone after the root causes. This started 15 years ago when people who were not creditworthy got loans. That's where it started. Then Wall Street executives slapped together those loans, broke them up, and turned them into very unusual instruments.